Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. Tonight's guest is Tim Ehlerding from Fetters Construction. Tim, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great. Well, you're one of the first guests that I haven't yet met until tonight. So this will be fun for me to kind of learn more about your background and get to know you a little bit. My understanding is you grew up in Northeast Indiana. Is that correct?
Yeah, really. Born up in Angola, but pretty well my entire life from the Decatur area.
Okay, all right. And whole life in this part of the world, have you had the chance to get out and travel and see other parts of the country?
Yeah, we've got a daughter in Denver. We've got a daughter in Iowa. A few months ago I was counting all the states, and I think I've been in about 40 of the states, the contiguous states, and I've not had a chance to go north or far west yet, to Alaska or Hawaii. But yeah, with some previous jobs and previous situations and what have you, I had a chance to see a good amount of the United States.
Well, that's great. So 2 daughters?
2 daughters and a boy and a son.
Okay, and how old are the kids?
Emily is the one, she is in Iowa.
Yep.
She's the one that has the doctorate.
Okay.
And she is at Iowa City, and she's 28. Stephanie is in marketing out in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
She's 27. And then Robbie is a financial analyst here in Fort Wayne for Do It Best.
All right.
And he is 26.
Okay. All right. So another Do It Best connection. We've had a current Do It Best employee on the show. We've had multiple past Do It Best employees on the show. So maybe someday we'll have your son on and complete the circle.
Oh, man, there you go. That'd be good.
Yeah. Well, we're not here to talk about them. We're here to talk about you and your organization. So, Tim, thanks again for being here. What we do on this show, as you probably know well by now, is we talk about your career path. The goal there is for other people who are in marketing roles or marketing adjacent roles to better understand some of their peers and the many different ways people find themselves into this world. Then talk about your organization, just so people have a better understanding of what Fetters Construction is all about. And then we talk about some of the projects that your organization is working on. For you, that could be construction projects, it could be marketing projects, it could be, I know you're in the customer experience world, so it could be there. So really, it's all fair game. But we want to start with your career path. So you grew up in Northeast Indiana. I always tell people, start at the beginning, whatever that means to you, and then kind of take us through how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Okay, of course, yeah. Well, I'm a Boilermaker, so went to Purdue, went down to the campus there and received my BS in civil engineering. Actually, my first gig out of Purdue I was city engineer in the city of Auburn.
Okay.
Which has been really sort of neat because I now currently am working in Auburn.
Okay. What was initially attractive to you about civil engineering? Why'd you pick that as a place to start?
Well, I knew engineering was going to be something that I was going to go into.
Yeah.
And I've always had a passion for construction. Growing up on a farm, we always, you fixed everything.
Sure.
And so we were very much of a hands-on and what have you. And my dad always was very handy in those type of things. And so I think I took off on a little bit of that. But I started looking at all the options, that are available, and Purdue has, as well as many other schools, has quite a few different options available. And civil just kept hitting me as that really looks like, and you really don't have to make a decision your sophomore year sometime.
Sure.
And so the civil with the construction major is actually the direction I went. So I'm not a structural engineer. I've got a construction management engineering degree from Purdue.
Okay. All right. So you start off with a civil engineering job in Auburn, and then tell us a little bit about that and where you go from there.
Well, it was really interesting because I started out as the assistant civil engineer or city engineer there in Auburn, and the mayor called me into his office about day 2. It might have been day 3 when I was there. And said, Tim, the city engineer has quit. But don't worry, we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine. We'll get somebody in here for you. Well, 4 years later, I continued to plug and chug away, which is actually, it was baptism by submersion is what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, because you've got all these book things you learn, and what have you. And then all of a sudden you're thrown into application and you're the big dog. I mean, and I was not the big dog. I mean, I was the drooling puppy, at the time.
Yeah.
And it was so cool. It was a great experience, lots of fun. But it was definitely very exciting.
Yeah,
very exciting.
Not something people get to do right out of school very often.
No. I mean, you got a really cool corner office, and you got to. I mean, it was really, but it really started me out on a path of public service and what have you. And there's been a lot of that in my career, and we can touch on that in a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, it was just a wonderful wonderful experience, and it was really sort of neat. I stopped by when I first started at Fetters here about 4 years ago. I stopped by the former mayor's house, and he was out in the yard, and his name was Bert Dickman, and wonderful guy. And I said, Bert, if you remember me, and of course, and we talked a little bit and what have you, and I said, this is really neat. You started me in Auburn, in my career. And it looks like I'm going to finish my career in Auburn. And it was just really a neat how that whole circle came around. Still living down in Decatur, Indiana.
Sure.
And so, but yeah, it's been, that was a lot of fun. So after that, then I as a city engineer, you get called on by a lot of engineering firms wanting to do all your engineering design for you and everything. And became real good friends with a gentleman out of Indianapolis who worked for a consulting firm by the name of Gove Associates.
Okay.
And we knew there was going to be a mayoral change because Bert was not going to run anymore.
Yep.
And the mayor that ultimately won was very nice. He pulled me aside and said, Tim, I like you and everything, but you're not going to have a job after I take the office.
Not unusual in the world of politics.
That.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that. You go into that knowing that.
Sure.
And so that's when I joined a firm by the name of Gove Associates, which is a municipal consulting firm. So it wasn't in the construction side. I was actually working for municipalities quite a bit. So, sewer, water, street, road, industrial park design, those type of things.
Sure.
I was with Gove Associates for about 16 years.
Okay. All right. So that puts you about 20 years into your career at that point. So where do you go from there? What happens next?
It was really interesting. I was sitting around the table with some pastors who are professors out at Concordia Theological Seminary.
Yep.
And as good Lutherans, we were having some Lutheran lemonade, of course. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it's beer, but if it's not, go ahead and edit that out. But and they were talking about this project, this library project.
Okay.
And they were bemoaning how this architect out of Chicago wasn't paying attention to them. He was designing crystal palaces when they don't need that out there on the campus. And there's a whole history of the architectural style of the theological seminary's campus.
Yeah, and it's really a hidden gem out there.
It's an amazing...
I'm going to digress for a second. I played volleyball at the gym with a mutual friend of ours. Jill Brown was on the team. And we were playing volleyball out there, and there were a couple nights when I got there early and just walked around, that it's pretty phenomenal back there and kind of off the beaten path, but pretty cool.
Oh, it's a beautiful campus. It was actually designed by a gentleman by the name of Eero Saarinen, who was a Swedish or at least Scandinavian background, but he actually designed that campus to mimic a Scandinavian village, and there's all kind of various architectural symbology out there and everything. But he's the same guy that actually designed the St. Louis Arch.
Really? Okay.
And several other well-known.
Interesting.
But anyway, so we were talking, and this architect, and everything, and they were telling me all the problems they had, and I said, you know what, this sounds like a heck of a lot of fun. And so I met with the president, and I said, tell you what, 4 years. I'll give you 4 years. Now, I'm philanthropic, but I did not give them 4 years. They paid me, but I said, I'll help you through this project. So for 4 years, I actually worked on. I ended up firing that architect and hiring a local architectural firm here in town, MSKTD, who does who did great work and amazing job on this project. But it was the library project out there, and so we started working through it. I worked through all the pre-engineering, the preliminary construction phases and everything. I actually did some traveling as part of my job to go out and help raise money for the project. So I did some part of that traveling thing.
So talking to alumni, is that for the most part what you're doing?
Primarily, actually, pastors don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much alumni, it was parishioners inside these churches. Who maybe had a heart for what the church did or whatever like that. So I actually did a little traveling too to raise some money. So it was a neat little twist that all of a sudden started. I think it started lighting that light of marketing and what have you.
Yeah.
And so for 4 years, and we ended up with Hagerman Construction, a very good firm, competition of mine, but a very good firm just around the corner here.
Yep.
We ended up building just a beautiful facility out there, and so that sort of got me into the construction world.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So you're at the seminary campus for about 4 years. That was the deal you had there. And then where do you go from there?
Well, so I figured out, look, maybe construction is a wonderful place to be. So I did spend 3 years at a local construction firm as a director of business development.
Okay.
And that was a great experience, good firm, good local firm and everything like that.
Yeah.
And really started getting to know everybody in the construction world. The cool thing about Fort Wayne, first off, we've got some amazing contractors. Of course, Fetters is one of those.
Yep.
But that was my marketing
There you
by
go.
the way. So
Yeah, very subtle, very subtle.
It was
Well done.
subtle
Yeah.
enough. Okay. But we've got some wonderful contractors. But we're also, the neat thing I love about Fort Wayne is that, yes, we're competitors. We compete with Hagerman, but we also do a lot of work for them, and they work for us.
Yeah, well, the way, being from a different part of the world, I moved here, spent about half my life in Massachusetts and about half here, and came from a very large city. And Fort Wayne, while it's still a big city, there's one of the things I like about it is there's accountability. If you better be careful which bridges you burn, because you might need to cross back over it at some point. So, even some of our competitors in the marketing world, a lot of them are more friendly than competitors, because you never know when you're going to need them, or you never know when you're going to work with them or for them, or have one of their people work for you. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I started getting to know a lot of the other people and firms and everything like that, and wonderful experience. But then all of a sudden, it was a neat little twist. Is that the economic development director position in Wells County opened up.
Okay.
Which is adjacent, just directly west of Adams County there.
Yep.
And I've as part of my role with the previous contractor, I got to know all the economic development directors in Northeast Indiana. I'm looking at these guys saying, man, you are having so much fun doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so the Wells County position opened up. Susie and I, my wife and I, talked a little bit about it, and said, what the heck, let's go after it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for 3 years, I was the Wells County Economic Development Director.
So in that role, I spent a really, really short amount of time working for an electric utility, and there was an economic development facet to the work. So it's trying to attract primarily businesses to come to the county, to invest there, to retain existing businesses, maybe grow their businesses. Is that a fair statement of what an economic development director does?
Yeah. Retention, attraction, and development are the three things. So, you work with the local industries, because 70% of your announcements, meaning the growths, is going to come from those local industries usually.
Sure.
And so we traveled a lot. I mean, we went to the home offices of a lot of the industries that were found in there.
Yeah.
And then working with them to make sure we're taking care of them. Do you need more, better water service, sewer, better roads, whatever it might be, telecommunication, whatever.
Sure.
And so spent a lot of time inside those industries, inside those businesses, and working with them. But then you also do, the attraction side of things. So you're working with site selectors. You're working with the state of Indiana, working with the regional partnership when they're bringing in leads and what have you. And so you do everything possible to try to get them to look at your community. And then the thing we've been facing mostly here is workforce development. And so there was a lot of workforce development involved. But a lot of it was, back to sort of that little, marketing thing, where it was just a lot of fun in marketing a county now. Now you're the cheerleader for an entire county.
Yeah. Well, what I always heard, and again, I'm going to get out of my depth pretty quickly, but in the economic development world is that attracting a CEO is one thing, but convincing the spouse to move there is quite another, and that's where the marketing piece comes in.
And that was the beauty of being part of the entire Northeast Indiana region is that, there were 11 counties that faced that exact thing. And so, we're proclaiming the greatness of Allen County, if we're looking at one of those CEOs or one of those C-level suite, C-level positions. And so, so proclaiming the greatness of everything that's available in Allen County, but also the wonderful things that are available in a small community. Was part of that effort.
So you do that for how long, Tim?
3 years.
Okay, so 3 years, and then what's next?
Okay, 2 more steps, and then one more step till we get to Fetters.
Sure.
For 1 year, I was courted by a national steel supply firm.
Okay.
To basically be what's called a corporate account manager.
Okay.
Which is my job was to go out and find corporations and get them to write in their specifications for new projects to use this certain, manufacturer's products and everything. So in that role, I covered basically the entire East Coast, West Virginia up to Maine.
Okay.
And wonderful Massachusetts even. Beautiful
So a lot
state.
of travel with that.
So a lot of travel with
Yeah.
that. And there's, we can talk a little bit about whether that was good or bad or whatever. It was a wonderful opportunity financially. I never could figure it out, though. And I think that's, maybe one of the questions you might ask later on. But, I never knew how to sell what I was supposed to be selling. Yeah. And for a year, it was a great experience and good company. And I'm good friends with many of the people there. But just ultimately figured out that wasn't the right move for me. Plus, I still am very interested. I'm very active in my home community with a lot of different organizations and a lot of different boards and what have you. And so, and that was making it difficult to do. So, we that I stopped doing that. And then, before I stopped doing it, I met with Steve Fetters, who's the founder of the company, and we were having lunch. And I've known Steve for years, part of that, that community of contractors. And, him and I had lunch, and I said, if you ever hear of anybody that's looking, type statement like you always do when you're networking and everything like that. And, the next day he calls me and offers me a position, and it's been a wonderful relationship for 5 years now. With Fetters, and I'm just loving it.
So there's a through line in your career of building stuff. One way or the other, it's, whether building a community or, helping people get building materials or working on the project on behind the scenes. It sounds like that's the one through line.
There is that continuity there. It's hopped around a little bit, and but it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great job.
So let's talk about this organization called Fetters Construction. Okay. What do you do? What's your role in the organization, and what, if anything, is the marketing facet of that work?
Okay. Well, I'm my official role is Vice President of Customer Solutions, which is sort of a catch-all for do whatever is necessary in order to retain and and get the new customers. I mean, I was brought on as the Director of Business Development. That was my first position, and then I was promoted to this new role. But it's really the same thing. With a construction company, there's various ways in order to get new work, and that's ultimately what my job is, to get us new work. One is to create a relationship with, say, the architects. And so I'm out there meeting with, becoming friends with all the various architectural firms. And Fort Wayne is blessed to have some of the best architects in the Midwest, quite honestly. I mean, we've got some great firms.
So how much, I'm not asking you to put an exact percentage on it, but how much of the business that comes your way is a referral through, for example, an architectural firm, and how much is direct to you?
I would say, architecture, if you could lump maybe architectural firms, subs, and suppliers in that category too, because you're developing those relationships as well. Probably a third of what we, the third of the quote unquote leads that we get, come from those type of firms. Because sometimes, it depends on the sub or supplier. They may have heard of something, and there's a lot of that reciprocity. I mean, we do a lot of the same things. Where I can't tell you how many architects that I've brought on board on projects that I've found, but we needed that architect. So there's that back and forth. Probably a third, I'd say, and then the other 2/3 is literally going out there and knocking on doors and shaking hands and kissing babies and doing everything necessary. So literally, there are times where I will go out and do cold calling. I mean, if I've got a project. If I got a project in Kendallville, I'll use as an example. We were doing a school project in Kendallville. I mean, I literally went to every business that's within a mile radius of that place, knocked on their doors, gave them a business card, gave them a couple bookmarks like this, and said, first off, we're going to be working here. If you have any problems, call me. I'll take care of it. By the way, if you need a builder, give me a call. And I've picked up, I can't tell you how much work we've picked up just doing that, whether it's a small little project like maybe some concrete work or some masonry work, or an addition onto a building. Well, construction's a lot different than a lot of products, a lot of services that you would sell, because there are folks who you're going to do a project for them, it's going to go great, and they're not going to need you again for a lifetime. There's some exceptions to that, colleges and hospitals, but a lot of people will build, a project, I don't know, every 10 or 20 years. So how do you then
where do you focus your time as in terms of customer retention versus attracting new customers? How do you think about that from a marketing and business development standpoint?
One of the first things I did when I came to Fetters is we sort of put together a policy or a program maybe of following up. So any project we do, whether it's moving a door in a wall or a $20 million project, I reach out to those people at various intervals: 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and 2.5 years and 5 years. And it's basically, go see them, how's it going, any problems, and every now and then say, they'll say, oh, well, this one door's stuck, or this, whatever.
Yeah.
It might be. Excuse me. And so, that's one of the ways as far as retention.
Sure. Just follow up, being a good steward of the relationship.
And just taking care of them. Yeah. Because those customers are ultimately, why we're in business.
That's
and
right.
So you take care of those customers. So that's one way as far as the retention. They get on an email list, and so I do keep in touch with them through sort of like a constant contact type thing, that I do on a monthly basis.
Yep.
Sometimes I have a little fun with it. Sometimes it's a little more serious, informational, but you're always trying to stay top of mind.
Sure.
Because even though we may have built that 15,000 square footer for them or something like that, they still might have a small project, a little addition or a interior renovation or something like that.
Sure.
That they would need a contractor to work on.
Yeah, especially right now when everybody's rethinking workspaces and the building they thought they needed in 2019 is no longer the building they need.
We're seeing that in the office world especially.
Yeah, for sure. So here's a challenging question, but one that I'm sure you answer all the time. What makes your organization different? If somebody said, why pick you over one of your competitors? And again, acknowledging you have good competitors, but what differentiates Fetters?
That is always a great question, because the standard response is because we care, and there's so much truth to that. I mean, when I talk to our superintendents, when I talk to our project managers or our estimators or whatever, it's so much fun to see how much of themselves they put in these projects. One of the projects we're working on right now is the DuPont Sports Medicine project up there at DuPont in 69, a wonderful project that was 3 years in the making. I mean, it was a lot of catering to that wonderful customer that's become a great friend now.
Yep.
But it's neat to talk to the project manager on that project, to just listen to about how excited Austin gets, when talking about this project and what have you, and what it's going to be and what it's going to do and all those type of things. And so I try to personalize that question more, in talking about a specific person, or I may talk about one of our superintendents and say, I've got this superintendent, David, that's just finished this school project, and you should have saw him working with the kids.
Yeah.
We bought them each these really little yellow hard hats that are made of, plastic no thicker than that piece of paper. Yeah. But we put our little Fetters logo on there, and David just was like a father to all those kids, and in many different ways. And so it's and I know it's probably cliche in a certain way, but it's really neat to see how personable our people are with these projects, how much internal pride they take on these projects.
Yeah, well, ultimately it's a relationship business. It's kind of like the floor, the minimum is doing good work. Everybody does good work, but it's kind of like who is going to put that extra effort in because of that passion, because of that personal touch.
Yeah, and that is actually one of my sermons, that I use all the time. Is I say, people, we're in a relationship business. It just so happens that we build buildings.
Yeah,
buildings is secondary compared to, and there's so much truth to that, because that relationship that you build with that owner or that whoever it is, ultimately transpires to more work.
Yeah, for sure.
And so yes, we do want to be in business to build more buildings and get more work and grow and profitability and all those beautiful things that you do when you're in a business. But ultimately, it's because we're we know and we've taken care of somebody, and it's cool to even watch some of our customers watch their families grow. Part of that relationship building.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the team you work with. Okay. So in order to get your job done, you obviously have the people in the field, the people who are actually, making these buildings come to life. But to get your work done, who's part of that team and how do you interface with them?
So Anthony calls me and says, Tim, I want to build a building.
Yep.
I say, okay, let's talk a little bit about that building. My role is, after I've done this amazing job of selling you, so you call me, or I just got lucky, and I still claim I did an amazing job.
Yeah, sure.
There's still that commission thing. So, no. So, I'm going to step through some of the early stages with you. What are you looking at? What size? What is ultimately your desire? Do you have a budget? Any of those type of things. Then we're going to hand it off to one of our estimators, assuming a couple things where the architect has come in on here. If you already have the drawings available, then we'll simply start, doing some estimating on those drawings, some takeoffs and things like that, saying, this looks like it's going to be such and such a budget. If we don't have any design, if it's so early in the process, which is really the best time to have a contractor involved, is even before or at the same time you bring on that architect, we'll actually get with that architect and we're going to start stepping through that process and start doing estimating and constructability reviews. I'm working on a really cool project down in Bluffton for a church and working with a local architectural firm here, great group of people. But, it's been really fun to watch how we've gone back and forth because they'll throw me this design and I'll say, that's not going to work if you want me to do this with my structure. And so I'll redesign it structurally for them or what have you and say, we'll save probably 30% in steel if we go this route. So it's been a lot of fun. So with your project, depending on where the architect is involved, there may be a lot of that back and forth between our estimators or myself or somebody like that.
Yeah.
And so once we come up with that final design and that budget and that schedule and all those wonderful things, then we're going to hand it off to one of our project managers.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that's going to step you through the process and take you through from the day we dig the first spade of dirt till the time we give you those keys to that beautiful new building. So it'll be our project manager that'll take care of that. Our safety director steps in there many times in the early stages and throughout the construction, cycle. If we're self-performing some of their work, and we self-perform concrete, masonry, and carpentry, one of those people are going to get involved, whether it's an estimator or project manager from those sides.
Yep.
But primarily it goes from me to estimating to project management.
All right. So as far as the marketing side of your work, another facet of what you do, you mentioned cold calls, you mentioned referral business, you mentioned repeat business. How else do you strive to get the word out about Fetters and to differentiate yourself from your competitors?
It's been a learning process for me, especially with the whole media thing. So if you know a good advertising firm that could help me with that, maybe have them give me a call sometime. Yeah. Or was that wrong to say that? Sorry, Susie, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah. But anyway, no, I should have said, sorry, Jill,
So we have the good fortune of working with Fetters and helping with some of that.
We're having so much fun working with you guys. It's been just what a great relationship. But media, social media. Just about a year ago, I was given that responsibility, and so basically what I'm doing is on a weekly basis posting some pictures, putting a few little sentences, trying to use catchphrases and things like that.
Yep.
And it's really been amazing to see just how much that has impacted our hit rate on Facebook and LinkedIn. And so it's those type of things. It's I've used Constant Contact. I use that on a pretty regular basis and try to continually grow that audience.
Sure.
I guess you might say. It's also just I'm part of several different associations, whether it's Chamber of Commerce's, whether it's whatever, school board association, and a lot of it's cold calling, but it's also setting up appointments with mayors and superintendents because some of the best resources out there are the mayors and the superintendents. We do a lot of school work. So obviously the superintendents of schools are very important to us. But mayors, have a thumb on their community. So mayors and county commissioners are wonderful resources, and economic development directors. I've spent a lot of time with those guys too.
Yeah, they know what's coming and where it's going to go and have that vision that is sometimes hard to come by. Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the projects you're working on. You've referenced a few, and again, don't share anything that's going to get you in trouble. But as far as projects that Fetters is working on, what are some of the things that you're most proud of? Some of the things that maybe you're excited about, maybe they're keeping you up at night, maybe a combination of those things.
I mentioned this DuPont Sports Medicine project. That is just that is a flag for Fetters Construction. I mean, because it is right out there on the highway and interstate, very visible and everything like that. And that was actually a project that it took us about 2.5 years to ultimately get the customer to sign on the bottom line. I mean, it was a lot of catering things, but it was neat to see how our office really rallied around that entire process. I mean, it wasn't just me; it was several different people, that was working through. But it's going to be one of the most beautiful buildings and functional buildings. It's going to have OPS in there. It's going to have several of the Lutheran, health network offices in there. So it's going to have, there's going to be 4 basketball courts inside there.
Okay.
There's going to be multiple offices. There's going to be just all kind of things going on. So it's going to be a really fun project. So it's been a lot of fun from the day we first heard about it to today. When we're out there putting on the exterior skin. So
when is that due to be complete?
We will be completed with that project. I know. Let's see. I think it's going to be June 1st.
Okay.
I think is when we're looking at having the ribbon cutting on that project.
All right. Well, great. Well,
so it's coming along pretty good.
Coming into the home stretch.
Yeah. We just finished a project over at Huntington University.
Okay.
Wonderful partners of ours, long-term partners of Fetters Construction. It's called The Hub. It's the Union Building in Huntington. And it was a renovation project, so it wasn't a new construction.
All right.
But it was really neat because this is a building that over the years has gotten piecemealed off, and now you walk into it and there's all this wonderful glass and this huge fireplace and just all this really cool architectural elements and everything like that. There's a lake on the north side of the building that now immediately when you walk in, there's wonderful vista of Snow Tip Lake, it's called there.
All right.
That was a cool project just because of the students that were involved and the administration over there at Huntington University. I mean, they've got a wonderful thing going on over there at HU. And that's just been a lot of fun for us. Not only because they've been long-term customers, but we had to work for that project. I mean, it wasn't a project that we were just handed to. I mean, we had to show our worth to them. That was a lot of fun. Then, I mentioned we did a lot of school work. We just finished a project over in Roanoke Elementary. Beautiful, beautiful school that pays this architectural tribute to the old school. So if you see pictures of the old school and then you see the new one, there's just really a lot of similarities on the architectural style, but it's a 21st century building.
It's great.
It's not this, old style. So those are 3 of the projects that has been real cool for us.
Well, that's great. It's kind of like trying to pick your favorite child. It's hard to pick just one.
Don't ask me that question. So I would just say yes, and we would move on. Or I'd say, tell me yours first.
Well, I only have one, so that's easy for me.
It's not a fair statement.
So let's move on to what I call the speed round of the show, where we kind of synthesize the 3 things we just talked about down to some pithy kind of short answers. So from a career path standpoint, while there is a through line in your career path, you've done a lot of different things. You've learned some things. You've probably had the opportunity to share some of that wisdom with your kids and with others. What's your best piece of advice when it comes to building a successful career, a fulfilling career? What's the one thing you've learned that you'd most be interested in passing on to other people?
I know you've probably heard it time and time again, but love what you do. And there's so much truth to that because you're dedicating more than half of your life, any one day, more than half of that day to whatever it may be. And you've got to love it. Love what you do, but believe in, especially in the marketing side or the sales side, you've got to believe in what you sell. I mean, your first job out of college might be a life insurance salesman. And you're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm a life insurance salesman. Well, think about, all the wonderful things a life insurance salesman does. I mean, you may be selling a policy to that couple and, sadly, one of them may pass away. And one of the best things you're doing is handing them a sizable check to take care of their problems. I mean, think about what you're doing there. So there's always something good about what you're doing, but believe in what you're selling. And the reason I say that is because several times, throughout my career, I've had people in my office or meeting with me personally or whatever, where they're selling something and I can tell they're selling it for the commission.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know if I've ever bought anything, from somebody that's doing that, because there's always an option for me.
Yeah.
But I've also bought stuff that I probably didn't need, because whoever it was, I could just tell, there was a passion there. And I almost felt like I just want to support them. I just want to, so whatever it is you do, whether it's in sales or marketing or media or whatever it is, you've got to just love what you're doing.
Yeah, it's hard to persuade someone else if you're not persuaded yourself.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. All right, second question. Somebody stops you on the street and they says, all right, Fetters Construction, you've got a minute, you've got 2 minutes. What are you all about? What makes you special?
Yeah, the very basic answer is always going to be, we are a general contractor that takes care of it from the day we start talking to the day I give you the keys.
Yep.
There are things that we can self-perform, of course, to help make it a more efficient project, possibly a more economical project for you. But, from day one to the day we give you the keys, we're going to be there beside you the entire way. But we're not going to stop being beside you, of course, even after that, because, we don't stop after you got the keys. We're there beside you throughout the life of that building. And then I start talking about, I will spend just a little bit of time about, the personalities within the office, and talk about, what we've talked about earlier here.
Yeah.
About, we've got people in, I'll say, I know you've heard this before, but we've got people that truly care. Let me tell you a story about, and I'll talk about, a project manager that, put in so much extra time on a project, or actually, in a school project. I mean, he spent probably more time in front of those kids than he did on the job site at certain times.
Sure.
And just sort of give maybe one of those anecdotal evidence type stories.
Yeah, so showing, not telling, letting the story speak for itself.
I've never been good. Everybody said, well, what's your elevator speech? And I from day one, I've actually sat down at times and tried to figure it out, and it never works out for me.
Yeah. Well, you and I agree on that for sure. I tell people, if you in 2021, if you have an elevator speech, for the most part, there's some exceptions to this, but find the nearest elevator shaft and drop it down the elevator shaft, because
I like that.
It's really about personalizing it. It's not trying to be all things to all people, but having a core to what your values are as an organization, what your culture is, and then adapting the story based to the needs of the audience. Because the old model, and I'm old enough to remember the old model, is you'd craft the elevator speech in isolation. You'd go to an event, you'd corner people and shout in their general direction. That never works so well, but in today's environment, it doesn't have a chance, because people want a customized message that's designed just for them. So I applaud that. I think that's a great approach. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right, last question. Okay. So you have the opportunity to work in an environment where you get to kind of see the future a little bit. You see what's coming, and people are thinking about their next project. And there's a lot of people today who are kind of stuck because of the environment we're in, who might not have that perspective, and as a result might be struggling with the nature of the times we're in. So if you had to offer someone some optimism, some perspective on why you believe, and assuming you do believe, that there are brighter days ahead, what might you say?
Well, if somebody tells me they're stuck, I'm going to look them right in the eye and I'm going to say, tell me what you mean by that. Because I truly believe nobody is stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, we are still in a capitalist society where we have the most opportunities of anybody in the world, to improve upon yourself, whatever that is. Yes, everybody has challenges. I understand that and I acknowledge that. But nobody can be stuck where they are, because there are so many opportunities out there. So that would be one of the very first things I would ask them. But then I would say, okay, but tell me what you want to do. Tell me what you love. Tell me what you're passionate about. What do you wake up in the morning, thinking, God, if I could only be doing this, or whatever it might be. But then in the construction world, especially, people are, and you even alluded to that earlier, is that the construction world is changing. Well, the construction world's been changing since the days of the Wild West, and even before that. I mean, construction years ago was building a cave, or carving out a cave. And, and then it went into wood construction. Now we're building, these huge steel edifices or whatever it might be. And so the construction world is always going to be here. We are an economy that still has to build stuff. In order to build stuff, you still need buildings to build that stuff in. We may not be building as many offices because, like the boy our boy we talked about, I mean, his job is at home right now. I mean, because of the whole COVID thing, he's actually, at his apartment and he loves it.
Yeah.
But we are a society that's continually going to need to be building stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be need, whether it's a new construction, whether it's a renovation. So I think the construction world, we're excited about it. It has its ups, it has its downs.
Sure.
But we're in a position, especially right now, we're in a position where it's nothing but up for the next 2 or 3 years, we're anticipating.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that I think it's hard to see sometimes, and you alluded to this, is that just because things are changing doesn't necessarily mean that you're stuck or it's bad. There's one of the things that I'm kind of excited about, and obviously this is said with respect to all the people who have had, real, loss during the pandemic, but there's also been a ton of innovation. It's kind of forced some things to the forefront that maybe were on the bubble or maybe not going to happen as quickly that are exciting and that provide all kinds of opportunities from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from an innovation standpoint. So I don't know if you're seeing that in your industry, but that is pretty exciting, at least from my perspective.
Whoever came up with Zoom, brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, look what has happened just with Zoom in the last, 10 months. I wish I would have bought stock a year ago in Zoom.
Yeah, sure.
If it was available. I mean, but it was neat to see, and alluding to what you're saying there, is that how somebody saw a need and filled it.
Yep.
Whether it's as an entrepreneur, whether it's as a somebody that works at McDonald's or whatever it might be. I mean, there's so many great opportunities out there.
Well, and it's additive. You talked about the history of construction. We still have wood frame buildings, but now we have the opportunity to use other materials when that's the right answer, and it builds upon what we've learned, and it just offers more opportunity. Maybe I'm too optimistic. No. Maybe I'm crazy.
These
but
are
that's
exciting
how it looks
times
like
right now. I mean, any time is exciting times. If somebody would look to me and I would have said these are exciting times in 08, 09 when we had the huge recession, they would have looked at me, like I was, stupid. And maybe they do that now, but rightfully so. But these are truly exciting times for whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's here in Fort Wayne, Northeast Indiana. I mean, we've got, this Electric Works project coming up, some amazing things in downtown Fort Wayne, cool things going on in the outlying areas. I mean, these are exciting times, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and with all that, residential growth comes the opportunity for business growth.
Exactly. Good stuff.
Well, Tim, thanks for being here. I hope that growth is at least proportionally generous to Fetters Construction, if not more so.
Well, that's my job to get more than our share.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
If we're not, then I may be a greeter at Walmart sometime.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that for sure.
I love the greeters at Walmart.
Yep.
So,
well, thanks for being on, and thanks for sharing your story, and thanks to everyone who listened to this episode. We'll be back next week with another great guest, and we hope to see you then.